Hello, Goosepunk and Goosebump heads. I'm your host, Christopher the Rupel, and today I'm going to take things a little differently because I don't really have notes for the next. Is this Goosebump scary? Ooh, is this spooky? Mainly because I can't find my copy of Monster Blood. Yeah, I have a terrible. I don't keep my books on shelves. I'm terrible at that. I was going to buy a new bookshelf so I could make sure I don't lose my books, but I've been lazy about that. I need to get on that. But I digress on that. And also, I haven't really done my notes for Monster Profile and Dr. Brewer. That will be next. I think that one will come out next week. I just wanted to put something up because I've been lacking on, putting on a little bit of content because work's been paining my buttocks. And I also had to edit the 2-year anniversary special, or 7 hours, the 7-year anniversary special, speaking of which was almost 2 hours long. That was a pretty hectic little edit. And I just wanted to get something out there. So I was like, you know what? I was, taking a shower right now. That's probably why you're like, oh, his hair looks greasy. No, it's just wet. I love the LA look. But no, that's why my hair is kind of wet. Because I just got out of the shower and I was like, you know what? This is a topic I can definitely speak about. And kind of been wanting to talk about. Like, I actually did a special, little video on the, on our Patreon about this, where I discussed my history of my Goosebumps, just how I've got into the series, and I've gone through 3 stages in my life of knowing and loving Goosebumps, and each stage is very different from the other. Let's start at stage 1. Let me just take a quick sip of my drink. I'm not drinking an energy drink today. I'm actually having a little booze, because I was like, drop your inhibition, right, Chris? Yum, 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 yum. This video is no longer for kids, right? You know it. They weren't made for kids to begin with. So, this was, back... Let's just take a look back. I am the youngest of 3 brothers, and my oldest brother is 10 years older than me. Now, I said this on the podcast. If you're a listener of the Speaking of Which, we did a whole month-long, loving tribute to Goosebumps. Because it was my 30th year birthday coming up, and it was also the 30-year anniversary of Goosebumps. We kind of share that kind of thing together. We're both born in July of 1992. And it means a lot to me. But thinking about it like this, my oldest brother is 10 years older than me. He was the perfect age for Goosebumps. And guess what? He was the first of us 3 to start collecting the Goosebumps. My other brother, who's older than me, is 5 years older than me. So he was the perfect age for getting the Goosebumps 2000s books and the later Goosebump books as well. He didn't have a huge Goosebumps 2000 book collection. Like I've said in the past, I have not read a lot of them. I've only read the first couple and Jekyll and Heidi. Jekyll and Heidi? Top tier shit right there. But I digress. But because of them, I have this kind of expansive knowledge on the Goosebumps stuff. Because they were early, they got the books. And, like most families, hand-me-downs existed, and so those books got handed down quite a bit. I'm trying to remember if we had a copy of Welcome to Dead House or not. I know I read it as a kid, but, I think it was the second time around, so my second era. But we had a copy of Stay Out of the Basement. We had a copy of Let's Get Invisible, Say Cheese and Die, and those ones were definitely the ones that were, super banged up. And then you had the ones that were a little bit later, Monster Blood 2, Monster Blood 3, Why I'm Afraid of Bees, One Day at Horrorland, The Haunted Mask 2. It's a lot of the sequel books, and a lot of the more famous books were the ones that we had. And I'm skipping ahead, though, honestly, because this is not when I started getting into Goosebumps. No, I was a wee little baby. I was a little baby. I didn't want to read those, but I want to say it was probably around age 4 or 5. I found a VHS tape we owned, and I tend, my parents were pretty lax with what I watched. Being the third of three brothers, I definitely was free to watch a lot of stuff. I watched a lot of R-rated movies at a young age, and yeah, not most of them were willingly. A lot of the times they weren't. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Child's Play messed me up as a kid. The Hellraiser movies really messed me up. I was terrified of Freddy Krueger. I had nightmares of him for ages. So, but I digress on those, obviously. But I found a VHS tape, and it was for a little TV show you may know called Goosebumps. Obviously, I mean, what else am I talking about? And it was a very specific episode. It was a very special episode, if we're going to be honest here. It was The Haunted Mask. And that was the first time I had ever read or seen anything of Goosebumps. And I fell in love with it instantly. Because it had the scares, but it wasn't so scary that I was like, like hiding underneath my blanket. Like those rest of those things I was speaking about. No. This was just one of those ones that I was like, it was digestible horror for a young viewer. Being 4 or 5, I was maybe a little too young for those. But at the same time, it still worked for me. I still really enjoyed it. Like, the image of the mask chasing after Carly Beth is ingrained in my mind. It's just one of those things I'll never forget. And it kind of became one of those VHS tapes that I would always pull out every Halloween, along with another one that was terrible. It was like, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like this bear who went to like a horror town, and it's not really animated at all. CR did a really good review of it in one of his Halloween, 13 Forgotten Halloween specials. He did a little retrospect on that one. I have that VH tape, and I watched it as a little kid and was like enamored with that one as well. It'd be those two back to back. It was like my own like TV specials. Here we go, boop boop, like that. One was definitely better than the other, and I would continue watching it up and for a while. Like, it would be like, even when I was not into Goosebumps, I would still pop in that tape because it was that good. It was just a really good episode of TV. Now, I think that was probably the earliest memory. So, with these early ones, like with the first stage, I was not like obsessed or anything. I was too young to be reading. Like, I mean, if I was 4 or 5, I was not reading at that point. Or at least not reading a chapter books at that point. I was reading, Cat in the Hat or something. But it was mostly the TV show. Because guess what? My brothers were watching the Fox Kids. On Fox Kids, we're watching the Goosebumps TV series. But the thing is, I only remember one episode in particular. It was the Deep Trouble episode. For some reason, that one's ingrained in my mind. I remember the fish people. I just remember like a barnacle guy. If I can find an image of it, I'll post the picture right around here or something. And I just remember being like kind of creeped out by the makeup design. Because, I was a kid. That stuff was creepy to me. And the only other memory I really have from that early period of time with Goosebumps was I remember going to a mall, and we went to a bookstore. I don't know which one it was. I don't even know which mall it was. But I remember going, and my brother coming out with, like, Goosebumps merchandise stuff. Like, it was not like the stuff you find, like, a lot of people posting pictures of, like, the tape dispensers or the staplers or anything like that. No, it wasn't anything like that. It was more just, like, random Goosebump bookmarks, like a sheet of, like, collectible cards that you tore and could trade and stuff. It was stuff like that. I just remember a display of, like, Curly the Skeleton, and it was displaying, like, right next to him was, like, it was, like, one of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps books. I think it was, like, the first or second collection. I want to say it was the first collection, because we own that. We have a copy of that back at my mom's house. So, yeah, that's my earliest recalled memories of Goosebumps. It was kind of my first stage of Goosebumps. And kind of going from there, every now and then I would watch the Goosebumps TV series. I remember one summer in particular, I want to say it was when it was the Fox Family Network. Now I was about to call it ABC Family, but it's not called that anymore. It's called God, what is that channel called now? It's like it used to be what's it called? The ABC Family. It was Fox Family, then ABC Family, and now it's like Freeform. Is it Freeform? I think it's Freeform. And I remember that channel playing Goosebumps during the summer. It was like, as soon as I got home from summer school, I would be like, okay, gotta turn on to ABC Family. I'm just gonna call it ABC Family because I want to call it Fox Family, but it is Fox Family. And watching episodes of that. So I remember watching Cuckoo Clock of Doom. I remember watching, it was never any two-parters, so there's none of the really good ones. It was mostly just kind of like the normal bunch. Like, I'm not bashing any of the single episode part ones, but a lot of the two-parters are way better. Like, let's not lie to ourselves. Those ones had the production behind them. And I remember one episode in particular really freaking me out as a kid. Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. For some reason, the little people inside those suits, I don't know if it was just the faces or what, but they freaked me out as a kid. And I was just like, nope, do not like this. Like, I think I just had a problem with, like, dolls and stuff, because, Chucky freaked me out as well. But you know what? Slabby didn't really scare me. That's kind of a funny thing. Like, Slabby didn't freak me out. Like, I think a lot of people's memories of, like, Goosebumps is from the TV series, and a lot of people being afraid of Slappy. I was never really afraid of him. I thought he was he was creepy looking. Like, I remember the cover of the first book, and the third book as well. Yeah, I remember we had 1 and 3. I don't know if we had 2 or not. But I remember those covers distinctly and never being that freaked out by Slappy. I thought he was kind of just, I don't know, he's just a dummy. Who you're calling dumber? Yeah. I don't know, he was never really, like, my biggie thing. So, Goosebumps was still, like, in my mind. I know my older, like I said, the one who was 5 years older than me, he was definitely reading Goosebumps still. Definitely past, no, when you're 8 or 9, you should still be allowed. I remember he had a copy of Creature Teacher, and I think I've said this in the previous podcast before, he read that one, and his teacher at the time hated him for, like, he hated that teacher to begin with. He did not get along with her. But I remember she got really angry at him for doing that book in particular for a book report, because I think he accidentally said her name instead of Mrs. Marg, because she kind of did look like like Mrs. Marg on the cover, and it's kind of hilarious. She ended up being a substitute teacher for me later on in elementary school. She did not like me because of my brother, even though I was a good little boy. But I digress. So kind of from there, I never really had this obsession. Like, I never had the want to read the books or anything. I mostly stuck with, like, Hank the Cowdog, Magic Tree House. Gosh, what other books? I'm trying to think of anything else I was, like, reading during that time. I know I had, like, particular series I was reading, so I was never, like, interested in Goosebumps. But I always remember the covers being around, because my brother, I'm the same way. I leave my room a mess as well. But I always remember those books being strewn about his room, and them being creepy looking. I just remember being scared of a lot of the covers, and intrigued by others. Like, I remember Deep Trouble 1. I love the cover of that one. And that one's, we'll come back to that eventually, but that one really caught my attention, because sharks are cool. Let's not lie to ourselves. Sharks are cool. So, getting into the second period of my time, I was 11 when I got back into Goosebumps for my second stage of Goosebumps obsessions. It was, like, for some reason, in middle school, my library, let's actually turn back the dial a little bit. So, 5th grade, I don't know, for some reason, I just wanted to be alone a lot during my lunch break periods. I was a very sociable kid. I kind of have a theory of why I was doing it. It's because one of our closest friends moved away, and I was still close with her, emailing her and stuff via AOL. And I think that just from like 4th to 5th grade, our group never really stuck together, sadly. And we just never really were together anymore. It was like she was kind of our rock of staying together. And I feel like during that 5th grade period, I was hanging out a lot in the library. I was reading books. I was looking at different things. I was looking at a lot of horror stuff during that time. And this continued onward into 6th grade. I was just reading, like going to the library during my lunch periods, or even before school, I was just going into the library because I was just like, that was just how I was. And I remember one day they had like put a bunch of the tables together, and they put a bunch of books on the table. And they're like, hey, go ahead and take one to every student kind of thing, whoever came in. And I remember me and Joe, a friend of the podcast who's been on there before, I was like, dude, get a Goosebumps. Like, they had the what's it called? The Give Yourself Goosebumps. They had a bunch of them on the table. And I got Beastly Babysitter, my personal favorite of those ones. And he got, I want to say Professor Shock or Deadly Experience of Dr. Eek. I don't remember. He probably didn't care because I was about to say, I think he's kind of said it in the past. He's not a big fan of Goosebumps, which I'm like, hey, okay. It's okay to not be a fan. But like, for some reason, like, I just read that book constantly. Like, I could not put it down. Like, I just kept reading it. And like, I kept on wanting to get all the different endings and all the different things, all the different paths. Like, I was obsessed with it. And that's when I decided, all right, I guess it's time to read Goosebumps. So I started reading my brother's collection, and, you know, I read pretty much all the ones that he had, starting with, it makes me laugh to this day, Deep Trouble, because that's the one I remember reading first, because I was like always obsessed with that cover because it was so cool. And as soon as I read it and finished it, I was like, that book was stupid. What is up with these freaking mermaids and shit? And like, I was not happy with that book. I'll be 100% honest. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't like it. And I don't know why. It's actually a really, like, no, I know why. I think it's because when I picked up a Goosebump, I was thinking, I'm picking up a book to be scared. You know, I'm picking up this book to be scared, and this one was just about a mermaid and an adventure story, and I was just like, what the flippity fudge is this? This isn't what I asked for. This isn't a bump of a goose. This is no. So I was really disappointed by that, but I kept reading them anyways. I think Night of the Living Dummy definitely got me in there, and oh god. Why am I forgetting? Oh my god. Girl Who Cried Monster was another one I remember reading distinctly. I think that was the one I read right afterwards. I was like, yeah, that's the Goosebumps I know. Oh yeah, monster dude. And you know why I think the whole Deep Trouble one was? I think it's because I watched the episode and didn't realize that it was based off the second book. Because, you know, we didn't have Wikipedia back then. So I'd say this was like 2001. No, this would have been 2003, so... Yeah, I definitely wasn't reading, like, on the internet, looking up stuff like that. Like, the only thing that I was doing on there was going on Newgrounds and stupid stuff like that. But, like, during that period of time, I was just devouring the books and just loving them. And I just remember my English teacher being pissy at me. Because, like, I was reading, but I wasn't doing, like, book reports on these. No, I knew better than to do book reports on Goosebumps. But she saw that I was reading Goosebumps, and she scoffed at me and was like, those are for little kids. And that one really hurt me, and I stopped reading because I had a big crush on her and wanted to be impressive to her. And you couldn't be impressive to a hot teacher reading Goosebumps, apparently. Still pissed about that to this day. I stopped reading because I wanted to be attractive to a teacher. Oh, you know what? There's actually a little side tangent on this one as well, because I think Yes, I think it was around this time. Actually, no, it was a little bit before this. This would have been like 4th or 3rd grade. And I rode the bus to school. And there was this one girl I had the biggest crush on. And me and her would just sit together and just read, and we would discuss our books when we finished them up and stuff. She was a way faster reader than I was. But I remember she read The Beast by R.L. Stine. And I remember being like, oh, that's a scary book right there. And that was the first time I tried reading a Goosebumps book, but got too scared. And I remember like picking up one of the Goosebumps books and like trying to impress her by reading it. And she was just like, oh, why don't you read like Fear Street or something? And I was like, what's a Fear Street? And she's like, it's the real deal. I remember her saying that. And I went back to reading whatever I was reading at that point. I'm trying to think, 3rd grade? Was it Series of Unfortunate Events? Or, oh no, it was Captain Underpants. My obsession was in 3rd grade was Captain Underpants. Definitely not a book report book, but definitely one I loved for some reason. Actually, no, I know why. It was funny. It was stupid. There was poop jokes and fart jokes and underwear. Hilarious for the kids. Who doesn't love it? I'm never going to ever criticize a kid for reading Captain Underpants because dang it got me into reading and so many other kids. Good on you, Dave Pilkey. Hey, love you, man. Don't do anything stupid. But I digress. I guess I read them because I wanted to impress the crushes. The teacher really should have just been impressed that I was reading for the sake of reading and not for a report. Like, I think I even told her, it's like, oh, I'm not reading this for a report. I'm just reading this for fun. And yet she still insulted. She was like, that's for little kids. And I'm just like, what do you want me to read? Harry Potter? I'm not interested in Harry Potter. I hate to say I was never interested in Harry Potter, except for the movies. I love the movies. Never cared for the books. Still not a big fan of them to this day. And even the movies I'm not a big fan of anymore. You can probably guess why. But let us skip forward into the future of I want to say it was like 2014, 2015. It was whenever the first trailer for the Goosebumps movie came out. And I was working at the movie theater. Like, I still work at the movie theater. I remember watching the trailer. And it was either... No, it had to be a trailer because I didn't have I had a smartphone, but I wasn't like using it like crazy or anything yet. And I remember seeing it and tweeting out immediately, I hope the Goosebumps movie is like a Tales from the Crypt style movie. It has like, does different segments and stuff like that. Like, you are like missing, like, I can't remember the exact tweet, but it was something like that. One of these days I'll find it and I'll post it again. But that one right there, that's the biggie. That's what got me into my 3rd and final wave of my Goosebumps obsession. Because of my interest in the Goosebumps movie, I was so excited to watch that one. And I remember in my excitement, I was like, I was starting to listen to podcasts at that time. Like, I was kind of a late person to podcasts. I was only listening to, I think, Sleepy Cabin and Last Podcast on the Left at that point. And no, I wasn't even listening to Last Podcast on the Left yet. No. So I wasn't reading. No, that was closer to when I left that theater. But I think I was just like trying to find something else to listen to because I was like, all right, music's fine, Sleepy Cabin's all right, but they don't update enough. Let's look up some Goosebumps podcast. And I discovered Goosebuds. I think it's just because the artwork looked really good, and I was impressed with their stuff. I thought they were really funny, and they kind of helped me get into the Goosebumps again. I started reading the books again, and started watching the TV series again. And I watched the movie and actually really enjoy them. I still really think the first two those two Goosebumps movies are really fun adventure films they feel like Goosebumps stories. Though I still wish to this day that they had done an anthology style movie. I get why they probably didn't, because that kind of stuff, it works still to this day, but I don't know if it works for a younger audience. I think that's why, and that's fair, I suppose. and you have so many to choose from. And I feel like a lot of people would be like disappointed if they chose one over the other. Yada yada yada. They'd probably stick with the Night of the Living Dummy. I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at. And that's kind of how it ended. That's kind of where I am. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with Goosebumps, but it is definitely one of the things I hold near and dear to my heart, and I'm still nostalgic for to this day. Like, I'm trying my best to start reading the newer ones. So when that newest one, I already have that one reserved, to get shipped to me as soon as it gets out, and I'm gonna read it as soon as it gets here because I am excited. And I'm going to try to go back and read the other ones. I'm trying not to read Goosebumps for the sake of reading Goosebumps. I'm trying to read them for the sake of myself and just to have fun. Because they're simple books I can read in like an hour and just have a blast. It's like watching a dumb movie, Like, I know it's stupid. I know it's not meant to be great or anything. But they're just fun. And that's why I love Goosebumps. It's just one of those series that's like, It could definitely be better, yes, I won't lie, but guess what? It's meant to be fun. They're supposed to be small stories that give kids literal thrills and chills for little bits of moments. And it literally helped kids get into reading, I feel like, and that's what really is the big thing for me. I love the fact that Goosebumps is the gateway portal for kids to get into reading books. And that's why I am kind of obsessed and love it to this day. Just gives me warm, fuzzy feelings. I love the Goosebumps. Like, if one kid... Like, I want to know every single kid who got into reading thanks to Goosebumps. Like, what was their gateway to reading more? Like, I know for me it wasn't Goosebumps... But I know there's plenty of others. I know my what's it called? The one who's 5 years older than me, he hated reading, but he would always read a Goosebumps book, no matter what. That just makes me happy. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching this time around, guys. As always, it's much appreciated. If you have your own personal history with Goosebumps, maybe you've been obsessed since you were a kid, tell me. Or maybe you've just been obsessed as an adult or an older kid. Let me know down in the comments. I want to hear your guys' stories. Hell, if there's enough stories out there, maybe I'll make another video and kind of discuss them with everybody. Maybe I could have you on, like, as like kind of a thing where it's just like, video chat, and we kind of talk about it for a little bit, just for funsies. Maybe that can be another series. Why is Goosebumps your obsession? Why do you love Goosebumps? And hey, if you're interested in talking about that, leave that down in the comments. I would love to hear your story of why you got into Goosebumps. And as always, hey, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/speakingofwhich. $1 gets you all those fun things. You get the podcast early. You get my show notes. You get a bonus episode every week of the podcast. You get bonus episodes that we make kind of secretly during certain productions and stuff. You get cut content. You just get it all. Come and get it. Hot stuff. Hee-dee-dee. And I'd like to always thank my two patrons at Yotosaurus Trey at Yotosaurus on Twitter, and Weiss at, Forced Left Hander, drop the last E on Hander, on YouTube. Definitely check out his stuff. His stuff is amazing. And Trey also had one of his stories, what's it called? I forget, narrated. I'll post that link actually down in the description. You should definitely check it out. Till next time, guys. Stay cool, stay positive, and stay spooky. They gonna get you by the goosebumps, goosebumps. Gotta get you by the goosebumps, gotcha. They gonna get you by the goosebumps, goosebumps. Gotta get you by the goosebumps. Night falls, it's cold and it's foggy.